A story we all know and love, but with a twist. Anansi and the Fire Ants, winner of the Bocas Children's Lit Fest winner. Ooh, Bocas Lit Fest Children's Book Prize winner. I tell you, I got so excited that I ate up my words because on set with us this morning, or rather via Zoom, is Garnet Lawrence. Good morning, Garnet, and welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning, Natasha. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us on the show this morning. Firstly, congratulations. How does it feel?
Thank you. It is over the moon. My family is going crazy. My children are so excited. They are celebrating me. My wife carried me out for lunch. It's just a beautiful experience.
It sounds like a wonderful experience. And I can only imagine the time you would have invested into this in order to finally get to this stage. But before we get into the process, let's talk about what went into conceptualizing your version of Anansi and the Fire Ants.
Well, to be honest, this started off as a dramatic presentation meant to be a public health campaign to prepare children who were returning to school for after the COVID restrictions were lifted. The idea was I was looking for a character or a medium that would be familiar to the Trinidad and Tobago audience and the Caribbean audience by extension, that would be able to communicate to them resilience and overcoming tremendous obstacles in a fun and loving way. So I looked at how Anansi, who represents for us in the Caribbean in particular, that character of resilience, overcoming great obstacles, and how he found tricky ways to get it done. And I thought he would be a nice, playful character that we could use. So I reimagined him in the Trinbagonian context. Some of the figures you can see are quite familiar to us if you read the book. And I looked at how it is that this character, Anansi, and his son, Boy, will be able to deal with the coming crisis and overcome this coming crisis. So children will be able to appreciate the 3 Ws in the classroom without hearing the wear your mask and put on your keep your distance and wash your hands, in a lot more of a playful way. That was the whole idea behind the book.
It's fascinating, and I know that many would love to see how you incorporate it, but of course we'll definitely need to get our hands on the book. Now, tell me something.
Yes,
how did you get to that stage where you decided, all right, it's time for me to submit this for the Bocas Lit Fest?
From the start, I believe it was a very strong work. When I had initially put forward the idea of it being a public health campaign, getting into the stage, I realized that actually the stage may be too small of a forum or a medium. I may not be able to reach the audiences I may want to. And so I invested my time and my money. It was published in the US, so we're talking about US dollars here. And so I believe if it was strong enough to be published and to move from concept to page and to stage, then it should move into a forum where it can be seen across the Caribbean and appreciated across the Caribbean. That was the initial thought. I didn't really expect to win. The idea was just seeing how it would stand up, because this is my first time doing anything in terms of children's literature. In fact, literature of a period. I never really wrote a book before. So I wanted to have a sense as to how this book could be judged or valued. So I entered it, and to my surprise, I won. Wow, yeah.
Definitely an amazing feat. And of course, viewers, you're seeing on the screen there the cover of Anansi and the Fire Ants. So you mentioned that this is the first time that you've written a book, and you are also a playwright and a screenwriter as well. So how do you manage these three distinct forms of writing? And do you think that they, of course, roll into one another perhaps and brought you to this space of such a successful book?
I believe it is very true that at least the concept is a story is a story is a story, regardless of what medium you are looking at, whether it is a play, whether it is a film, whether it is a book. And because at least I took the time to ensure that I was trained in the area of theater and just in English as well, I was able to communicate or translate that idea into different mediums. So for me, actually, it really comes down to how does the medium or how does the story first hit me? There are some stories I see immediately are meant for the stage. There are some stories that I also see meant for film media. And so it really and truly matters how do I want to reach the audience, and what is the medium, or how does the medium want itself to be expressed? This book was very accidental. I had a full script written out, and then I realized, okay, I can reach more people, and it was easy for me to translate from film into story, or from play into story, because I have been spending so much time telling my children stories about COVID-19. It's not funny. I listen to stories to them, so it's not funny. So immediately, because of that continuous talking with my children all the time about plays and stories in particular, it was easy to shift formats in my mind.
Definitely. And we look forward to seeing many different incarnations of this book as we just get familiar with Anansi and the fire ants. Now, one of the things that you mentioned, and this is a theme, of course, we've seen in the book and in our conversation so far, is that this is definitely touching on a social issue. And with a lot of your work, you do touch on social issues and try to bring healing and some sort of awareness, I would say, to those who are reading, perhaps viewing, and so much more. How do you think your writing is able to influence that in others, and what do you want people to take away from your writing?
My first focus is always, how do I speak life into the people, not only who are watching in the audience, but more importantly, people who are even taking part, the actors themselves. And so it's always inspired by real life situations. So this book came about, I was carrying my children to the park, and while we were there playing, I told them this was just after restrictions were being lifted. And I said, okay, you're going to play, but try to maintain a distance and make sure you wear your mask. And they played with some other boys, and the boys were like, my daddy tell me don't wear no mask, and that vaccine thing, and they went off. And I realized that, yes, the public health campaigns are being put out there, but it wasn't specific to children. And so I saw that there was a need to speak some measure of life, some measure of direction, some measure of purpose. And that has been my mantra from the start. Anyone who has seen my plays, seen the books, seen the films I would have produced as well, would know whatever I am doing always addresses what is happening in the current, to the people who have, it always comes from a void where I see it's not being spoken to, and I always ensure that it speaks directly to that audience, whether it is teenagers, whether it is children, whether it is adults. That has always been my mantra from the start. And so, for me, the function of theater, the function of drama, the function of film, function of stories is always to lift up and to give people a perspective that allows them to make better decisions in life. That's always been my story. That's always been my mantra.
And definitely, and we can see from this, of course, you are encouraging those to make some better decisions. I found it quite interesting that you mentioned, of course, the aim of many of these campaigns during what we would have experienced in COVID-19. What would you recommend should be done in order to reach children particularly? I'm assuming theatre is one of them, but what other mediums would you say would be a good idea to just bring forth that awareness?
Well, for me, anything that requires or involves live interaction with children and storytelling works. And the challenge, of course, is that when you have it in that format, you have the limit of the immediacy of that specific audience. And so in order for a wide group of people to have that experience, you have to replicate it over and over and over at different schools, which is why arts education programs is so beneficial, because it allows people to experience and to hear and to see and even take part in the story. So when I first told this, presented my book at the Castara Government School last year, I got them actively involved. So some of them were saying cough, cough. Some of them were saying sneeze, sneeze, cough, cough, sneeze, sneeze. So they got to play in the story as well. And that allows for the information to be received better, because I'm not just listening with my ears, but now I'm actively participating in the process, in the story. And so I'm able to retain the information a lot better. And more importantly, because of how it's in the form of a story, it doesn't come across as it is dictatorial. I'm trying to force you to get you to, it becomes a lot more playful, and children learn through play. That has been my training, at least, and my experience with my children as well. Children learn through play. So if you make it in the form of softer, interactive, participatory, and a story format, they will always remember. When I was a child, they had a campaign in Tobago with Campy, and I could remember the song up to now, Campy, about the Tobago rainforest. So I can remember that, even though that was a couple years ago. A few years ago. But I can still remember that very well. So stories always work. Stories, song, and dance, especially with the younger ones, it always works.
Definitely. And just a few years ago, I understand completely. It's beautiful to see that, of course, your book can be used as a social tool to navigate different crises as well. And of course, the 3 W's, classics, they're never going to go out of style. We need them for everyday life.
Yes.
So hats off to you for incorporating our culture and also the necessities of health into one. Garnet, where can we purchase your book?
Well, at present, we're putting the books into Trinidad at present. And so we put them into Nigel R. Khan's, R.I.K., Ishmael Khan's, Muhammad's, Jadu's in Arima, paper-based bookstore. And we're trying to get them to Tobago right now in Nelson's bookstore, Educators, and some other stores as well. They will be sold at around $75. Per book, including VAT at present. And we're trying to make sure they'll be available for the nation by probably this weekend here. Actually, it was very funny. I was planning on getting the books into stores for Christmas. I never intended it would have been lining up with the same time as this whole prize was being announced. So both of them coming at the same time was really and truly a work of God.
Absolutely wonderful. And of course, when the divine intervenes, there's nothing that can be done. You go for the ride.
True.
Garnet, tell us, what advice do you have for younger ones and those who are interested in writing but perhaps don't know where to start?
First of all, write it. And I think that is, I read, listened to a post once, and the post said simply, if you are a writer, then you have to write. I cannot say I'm a playwright if I don't write plays, or a screenwriter if I don't write screenplays. I cannot say I'm a poet if I'm not writing, but if I'm not actively looking for mediums through which I can express my art form. So for me, a play is never meant to live on a paper or live in my head. It has to be written, and it has to move from page to stage. Same thing with a screenplay. Same thing with a book as well. And oftentimes as writers, we procrastinate a lot. Yeah, we procrastinate a lot, and we don't write it down. And after you write it down, have it critiqued, have somebody else hear it, have somebody else see it, to get a sense as to what it is and be critiqued. And of course, take that critique with a bucket of pigtail and some saltfish and some smoked herring, because you don't want that the critique causes you to feel as though your book is a failure. What the critique is supposed to do is to help improve the product or the quality of the book. And so I would even say be very careful who you tell your ideas to, because some, like my children, they were over the moon. My child could tell the entire story by heart. But other audiences, well, Anansi, how dare you take Anansi and put him in your own form and format? So you have to know which critiques carry your work forward and which critiques are more on the personal side of our personal opinion, and then get it done. A play is not valuable if it remains a written thing. It has to get onto stage. A book is not valuable if it remains on your computer as a Google document. It has to be published. So if you have the courage to write and the courage to share, then have the courage to take it the last step forward and get it published or get it produced.
Definitely. Fantastic words there, and true words as well we can apply to everyday life. Garnet, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and congratulations on your win. Looking forward to seeing more from you, and hoping that you have a wonderful one. We have some more coming.
This is the first of probably 3 or 4 books. I already have second one being written already. So it's just a start. This is just a start, I assure you. It's just a start.
Wonderful. Well, Garnet, we look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful Christmas.
Same to you. All take care.
Garnet Lawrence, author and winner of the 2023 Bocas Children's Book Prize. Wow, great book there. Anansi, any firearms? I'm looking forward to reading it. Maybe, yeah, I should read it.
I mean, I think the concept of how we came about it is really, really interesting, and I think it's necessary, because I think a lot of times we might think of an idea and we want people to get involved in it. So, for example, the ministry put out all their campaigns as it relates to it, and they tried their best. But it's always nice when people can say, you know what, I can improve on that. And they take the time to be able to sit down and do that improvement and contribute to society in a positive way. And I think we see the reflection of that coming in the fact that he was able to win the Bocas Children's Book Prize.
Agreed.
Because the book obviously was of the quality that meant it was good, great for children to read. It was great enough for the Bocas team to be able to choose him as the winner. So congratulations to you, Garnet.
Yeah. I actually look forward to when they have the children's prize, specifically the illustrations that come out of it.
Yeah.
Because Anansi is such an iconic character. The reimagined Anansi is always refreshing, and I love the fact that he reimagined or has been reimagined so many times. It never gets boring. So I'm literally here like the little 5-year-olds and the 6-year-olds. I want to see it for sure.
I'm excited to read the book. I want to see how Anansi is going to be washing all his hands. The 3Ws.
That's a very valid thought.
This is one of the main things that came to my mind. I was like, but how are you washing his hands? So we'll have to get the book.
If Nancy can do it, you can do it.
That's the spirit.
The message clearly resonated.
It really did. The 3 Ws from a spider. Trinidad and Tobago, stay tuned. This is the Now Morning Show. We have more coming up on Tobago Thursdays. So grab a coffee, grab a cup of tea, and come back and join us.